It's really great to be with family right now. And that's exactly how I see the coming together of technology and also real estate. Um, when I co founded the PropTech Consortium of the Philippines, with who will go down history as the mother of PropTech in the country, Miss Emma Imperial, we both knew that, like any great and successful marriage, it wasn't going to be easy. See, I come from a very lucky vantage point, which is both technology and real estate. And growing up, allow me to be very personal and sentimental about it. My father, MACLANG, has devoted his life to advocating, especially the socialized housing sector. And it was all he knew to do for almost 30 years. At 8 years old, I would sit outside the office of then president of the National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, Mr. Ramon Albert, and then subsequently Mr. Roberto Alvarez. And I was an inquisitive and impertinent 8-year-old who'd ask questions about housing. I suppose not much has changed, right? And in my opening, I'd like to really pay homage to many of those who passed on during the past pandemic, including someone I would always travel for, Mr. Jose Capepe Manalad of Enrea, who just recently passed this last year. And I see here great friends and family members in the industry, such as Sheda. Thank you to partners such as RJ Ledesma and its various presidents who's allowed us to serve. More recently, when who to me is the youngest and most inspiring mover and shaker in this industry, Mr. Raymond Rufino. Yes, all my friends know I have this habit of making them very uncomfortable by talking about them behind their back. Who, as Jopin very, very correctly pointed out, is not just the go-to person, but for me is the father for sustainable real estate in the country. I was happy to have served for 3 terms under the Urban Land Institute under his leadership and that of Buds Wenceslao. Asiana, as you know, will give rise to what will be the biggest smart city in the world. The Visayas and Mindanao region has its own share of champions. And we have one of them today, Mr. Cari Lagdameo, who is relentless in championing that region. And it's not just Davao that's seeing meteoric growth. In the Visayas, the PropTech whiz, Tonton Luterio, the legendary phenomenon that is Filipino homes. He's taken it to the streets, literally, in activism to create for and advocate for changes and reforms, especially in the way we champion the most underrated players in the industry, the salespeople. Last but not the least, probably the most underrated person in this group, who you all see as the host, Mr. John Aguilar, who's fastidiously documented the rising of the real estate industry through his multi-award winning Philippine Realty TV. The contribution of this industry is incontestable. Then came COVID, and we were fearful greatly for what the pandemic would do to this industry. But what can the real estate industry learn from technology, specifically fintech, which at the end of the day is just the movement of money? So yes, I'm going to try to go very Jerry Maguire on you, or was it Cuba Gooding who said, "Show me the money"? The real estate companies today are faced with a new type of customer, one whose purchasing habits are not just based on location, because right now in a work from anywhere scenario, location probably takes a secondary seat. They're more importantly looking for security and also at the same time convenience. The banking and financial services sector has faced the same problem, And they have responded by bolstering their digital offerings to allow for more online transactions, taking advantage of the country's connectivity and the rising digital infrastructure. The real estate industry could certainly use some digital revolution of their own. And this is where the PROPTECH consortium comes in. It's a term that you will be hearing more and more in the coming years as more investments and developments are announced. PropTech is how the real estate industry can reap the benefits of the breakthroughs in blockchain, big data, IoT, and other cutting-edge fields of technology. It will be what to real estate soon, what fintech has been to banking and finance for the past 4 or 5 years. Now, in the Philippines, there's plenty to be excited about. And I'm happy to have this opportunity to share the good news of what's happening in the Philippines. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, is it just all in paper or just all of these talks that are happening all over? Happy to tell you that it's not. Just like blockchain, PropTech is still in its infancy, and we're really barely scratching the surface. A number of developers have already announced partnerships with PropTech firms that make the buying experience simpler and offer more innovative visualization technologies like augmented reality. Acquire, a property and fintech platform based in the Philippines, and has recently received Series A equity funding, partnered with Ayala Land Premier for its payments. And the industry celebrated this. So how many of you guys are gamers? Please do follow me on Twitch as Song of Samarkand. And due to the growing global demand for game software development, Unity, yes, the Unity, has expanded its reach in the Philippines and has actually partnered with Arthur Land Corporation to establish the country's first creator center for excellence in the world. Not just in the Philippines, but in the world. I remember in 2019, like it were yesterday, just before the eve of the pandemic, we brought in a group of 15 technologists in what is the mecca of fintech and financial services in the world, Singapore. Many of you here were with me then, working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore for 2 straight years now. We officially launched Digital Pilipinas and World Fintech Festival Philippines, supported by both the governments of Singapore and, of course, the Philippines. We have in Digital Pilipinas a 12-point agenda that's intended to address the barriers to the future of the Philippines. So imagine it like the UN SDG goals, but for technology. The 12-point agenda covers payments, GovTech, RegTech, digital transformation, overseas banking, mobility, InsurTech, e-commerce, cybersecurity, energy, edutech, digital cities, esports, and of course, PropTech. More than just talks, we have 8 sandboxes and legislative advocacy. Many of you have mentioned it earlier. Our biggest challenge will be the regulatory framework, and it's one thing that we hope to be able to unpack with all of you. Speaking of hackathons, in 2019, the FinTech Philippines Association, where I serve as both trustee and executive director, partnered with Union Bank and the Urban Land Institute under the visionary leadership of Raymond Rafino, Buds Wenceslao, and Dr. Tito Ortiz for what was the first ever real estate hackathon in the country, serving both real estate and livable cities. So this isn't our first rodeo. Tagged as UHack, The two-day coding marathon gathered some of the brightest students and professionals in the field of technology to solve the greatest problems of our industry. Emma gave a teaser of what is a forthcoming collaboration with some of the leading technologists from Union Bank, Multisys, and 8Ventures, a venture capitalist firm that invests in next-generation technology companies in the Philippines. Other joint innovation projects that we have included in the pipeline is a co-branded disaster management application for high-risk cities in an effort to make them livable. Starting in the Bicol region, as it is the home court of not just Imperial Homes, but also of our chair, Ms. Emma Imperial. Cybersecurity is something that we're working on very closely, and it will be made available for free through 8Ventures if you are a member of the PROPTECH consortium. So as you can see, there's so much that you can get from being a member, so please join. Sorry about the shameless plug. Right now, based on the current numbers out there, the future truly looks promising. We're all quite familiar with REITs and how they made possible the ownership of commercial property by real estate investors through fractional ownership. KPMG said in a paper it published that tokenization can further simplify REITs and its transaction and implementation. For instance, through tokenization, one can reach a larger pool of investors through trusty blockchain-based software, making the entire process more inclusive and more secure. New asset classes such as tokens, NFTs especially, is changing the way we are able to own and create art. Last June 2021, the most profitable NFT artist in the country, Luis Buenaventura, sold what is one of the most expensive pieces of single unit art. How does tokenization then bode for a real estate asset? A similar transaction has been done recently with a luxury property in France and shares representing fractional ownership of a villa in Paris, where tokenization took place. Truly, ownership and power is back to the people. And very recently, a luxury global property in the Philippines attempted to tokenize its asset, a partner of ours, but only to be temporarily derailed by regulation and legislation. But I say only temporarily. The Philippines is one of the most exciting sandboxes in the world where technology and real estate can birth a true democratization of ownership. Unbeknownst to many of you, our regulators, such as the Department of Finance, one of the biggest champions of digital banking in the region, along with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the SEC, is paving the way for some of the most innovative sandboxes for financial payments and services. For real estate, very soon to come. The Monetary Board of the BSP approved the new guidelines for the establishment of open finance last June 17, way ahead of most markets, even way ahead of the EU. In fact, some of the country's top developers, Ayala Land, Mega World, Philinvest, SMDC, Double Dragon Properties, are now promoting their REIT offerings. These very same companies are also investing quite heavily in technology. Can the tokenization of real estate in the Philippines be far behind? Now, we're moving from ownership of properties to a much bigger issue, which is that of the teching up of cities. Can the technology driving PropTech be used in addressing the issues resulting from urbanization? Dubai is probably the best source of such use cases in this respect on account of its acclaimed Smart Dubai program. This program has launched over 130 initiatives that make use of an assortment of technologies, including blockchain, big data, and IoT. One of the goals of this initiative is to make this city livable, and it must have met some of those goals many times over. In June of this year, the city was named the second most livable city in the Middle East, just below Abu Dhabi. The PropTech industry in the country is raring to deliver, and deliver it can. It stands on the shoulders of giants. Of special note are two people. Dr. Tito Ortiz, the chairman of the FinTech Philippines Association, and also the father of FinTech in the country, and Ms. Emma Imperial, the chair of the PropTech Association of the country and the mother of PropTech in the country. Thank you for believing that the time to make this happen is now. And speaking of making things happen, in closing, to this day, the city branding of Makati is Make It Happen. When we first created that, it was a clarion call for leaders in the then financial district to make things happen. Now, the Philippines is seen as a fintech hub, not just in Asia, but also one of the most important markets in the world. Bringing real estate and technology together, we hope to make the Philippines a PropTech capital in Asia. One sandbox, one experiment, one thought leadership initiative at a time. In behalf of the other co-founders and board members of the PropTech Consortium of the Philippines, Ms. Kathy Saldana, Ms. Emma Imperial, Dr. Tito Ortiz, Ms. Jopin Romero, Mr. Carrie Lagdameo, Mr. Ron Hose, and Mr. Sylvester Wong. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po ang real estate and technology ecosystem. Mabuhay po ang Digital Pilipinas. Maraming salamat.